What's up, everybody? Good morning. Welcome to Philly with John Marks on PHLY. As always, brought to you by BetParx. Good morning to everybody out there. Our 8 a.m.ers, our Mad Chatters. Good morning. We've almost made it to July 4th and a nice little long weekend as it is Tuesday. Excuse me. Is it Tuesday? Is it Wednesday? I still can't get it right. Today, Wednesday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Today's Wednesday. Yes. If you're watching live, we appreciate you. If you're watching later on, comment, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Tyler Zuli's with you this morning. No guests, no co-hosts, just Tyler and me and you, and no baseball game to talk about last night. It was weird. I didn't even think, I didn't realize that it was supposed to be really bad weather because we've been having a lot of storms, but then they kind of pop up and then they go. The previous night, same thing happened. We had a big downpour before the game. We had a lot of rain after the game, and then it pretty much just rained. So my friends that were in from San Diego, they had tickets for 2 games. I went with them on Monday night, and then they had tickets Tuesday because they were leaving today. They have an afternoon flight today, and it was a scheduled day game. So they were only going to the first 2 games of the series. Then they were jetting. So they're down at the ballpark last night, like in the visitors clubhouse and stuff. And I get a text from my guy Paulie, and he's like, "Yeah, they rained the game out." I'm like, "No freaking way!" Yeah, so they got screwed. Plus, it was raining all night, so I don't know what they got into in the city. But anyway, did have a game last night. Doubleheader today, a split doubleheader, right? You know, with the Padres, they just can't squeeze that game in later because it's more difficult because they only play them the one time here. And it was a fireworks night. So last night was a fireworks night. So they have to make sure that they're able to get that in. So you have a split gate, a day-night doubleheader, even though the second game starts at 6:15. So that is today. So you get a lot of baseball today, a lot of Phillies baseball today, which I'm looking forward to. The big story, and didn't it feel like that this was going to happen? But the big story from yesterday was Yabba Dabba See Ya, as Guerschon Yabusele signs with the Knicks of all teams. I mean, Jesus, the Knicks. All right, you may say, yeah, Johnny Marks, you're not even a closet New York fan anymore, Knicks fan. You talk about Dawn Staley. If Dawn Staley becomes the head coach of the Knicks, you might just become a full-blown Knicks fan. That is not true. I would be a 76ers fan that roots for the Knicks. There's a difference, right? The Sixers are good. I'm not rooting for the Knicks, but if the Sixers suck, it's hard for me not to root for essentially a Villanova team with Dawn Staley and now Yabba Dabba Do. But I mean, I don't know. I liked Yabusele. I thought he was a good bench piece. The 76ers, I'm sure all else being equal, they would have liked to retain him. But it's pretty clear that they are focused and they are not even taking a chance at losing Quentin Grimes. So and this is me being honest, all right? I understand the NFL and the salary cap rules. It's not difficult. I understand how luxury tax works in Major League Baseball and hockey less, but it's not as complicated. This whole apron thing in the NBA with the first apron and the second apron and all this other stuff. Here's what I know, that they're making it more difficult for teams to stack max player without there being some type of penalty, right? And the luxury tax payments that you have to pay are exorbitant. So when you look at the Boston Celtics and they moved Drew Holiday and they moved Porzingis and they cleared a bunch of cap space, they ended up saving. Do I still have this? I don't have this in my notes anymore, but they ended up saving, the salary's one thing, but the luxury tax payments, let me just type it in real fast. How much did the Celtics save with trades? It was something close to $500 million. So the Boston Celtics saved in salary was a lot, but it's also in the luxury tax payment. So they projected it was $180 million that they saved just in tax penalties. And I'm not sure if that wasn't in after the first one or the second one. And I saw somebody else, they saved $260 million. There you go, after the Porzingis trade. So the Sixers are delicately trying to keep Quentin Grimes, and they looked at it and said, well, if we signed Yabusele to what the Knicks gave him, then Grimes, you wouldn't be able to go over a certain amount of money to retain him. So the Nets are really the only team that would be able to go out and would be able to give Grimes big money. And there's really no reason to believe at this point that they'd be able to do that. But I was reading Sixers Adam on Philly Voice, and he had said something to the effect that Grimes, like the Sixers could pay him $17 million right now, and they could have signed Yabusele to what they gave him, and they could have given him about $18.5 million per year, Grimes. So you could have kept Yabusele, and you could have paid Grimes up to $18.5 million. All right, and if that failed, they could have matched an offer. They would have had to get either cut ties with Andre Drummond or do something with some other players, with Kelly Oubre. But if they were really that desperate to keep him, they could have. So they're more or less saying, is it worth the risk of losing him if the Nets are like, oh, hey, so that's what we were waiting for. We were waiting to see what the Sixers were going to do with Yabusele. Now we know what we can offer him. Now with Yabusele gone, they can essentially lock it in. They're going to keep Grimes, which, I mean, they find it important, obviously. They've made it pretty clear that they were not going to allow him to leave. And Yabusele, am I the only one that thinks this? Like, he was really good to start the season. I mean, I don't want to say he was exposed. That's probably not the right word, but it's like that. It's like the Amundo Sosas, Tomas Perez, Freddie Galvis, who actually was a pretty good starter in the league. But you know what I mean? It's the utility guy that when pressed into being a starter, it gets exposed a little bit. And I thought Yabusele was a really good find. And like he contributed, especially early on. He's not a starting caliber player in this year. What are we talking about? So I know Sixers fans were mad. I know that it's salt in the wounds that he goes to the Knicks, but like he is a versatile bench player, and he's wasted here in Philadelphia if the team's not competing. And last year his performance was wasted. The one thing that I saw criticism towards Daryl Morey and the Sixers, and I understand it, but I'll defend him here, was, well, if you weren't going to resign him, why wouldn't you have traded him at the trade deadline? There was interest. And reportedly the reasoning was they wanted to keep him for this year. So they weren't going to trade him. They kept him, and they were hoping to bring him back. But then remember, they acquired Quentin Grimes, and when they decided not to trade Yabusele, Grimes hadn't performed like he performed yet. So his performance changed a lot of things. So hello, Quentin Grimes. He is a virtual lock to be a 76er. It just depends on how much money, and I think the market is going to dictate that. And as a couple of moves are made, you may see this deal kind of slide into place here shortly. But if you're a fan of the Flintstones, and I don't know how old you would have to be to really be intimate with the Flintstones and know the ins and outs of the cartoon, the adult cartoon, the Flintstones, when it's quitting time, and Fred's up on the Brontosaurus, and it's a yabba dabba doo, and he slides down the Brontosaurus tail and he flies off into his car. That's what Guerschon Yabusele did yesterday. He said yabba dabba doo, and he slid right over to New York. By the way, not a huge contract. He's not making $10 million a year. I remember we were talking about, especially earlier on, it was like, wow, man, he's going to make some money in free agency. Nah. Free agency has been a dud in the NBA. We'll talk about the Damian Lillard thing, how he got released by the Bucks, which was a shock. But this portion of the program brought to you by GLAT Hair Restoration, GLATHairMM.com. You can text them or call them, 610-980-4000, 610-980-4000. As we welcome in Tyler Zulli, noted basketball insider, NBA insider, not for PHLY.
That's what they call me.
Yeah, when I look at you, Tyler, I think that's the next Shams right there, Tyler Zulli.
I don't blame you. I mean, I would even shoot higher than that. I think I might be even better than Shams.
Well, Shams was the one that was saying this was going to be one of the biggest NBA free agencies ever, or something like that, and none of that happened. But anyway,
it certainly was never going to be for the Sixers, right? And the one thing that you brought up that I kind of have been back and forth with, and I see both sides, and I'm trying to kind of formulate my opinion as the days go on, is the trade scenario with Yabusele, right? Like, if you weren't going to retain him, why wouldn't you trade him? So I guess the scale, the balancing of the scale is like, what was the return going to be? Probably second round pick would be my guess. You'd get a second round pick for him, which I guess you could take a flyer on a guy, young guy, upside athlete type of player, whatever it might be. But I think the reason the Sixers didn't move him, you brought it up, was one, Quentin Grimes wasn't playing at the explosive level that Quentin Grimes was playing at yet. So there was an expectation that they may be able to bring both of these guys back.
Right.
And two, the thing that you and I have talked about over the last couple of weeks with the Sixers is this is a roster that is constructed to win, that didn't win last year, primarily because of injuries. Now, is it a deep playoff roster? Probably not. But it's a roster that was constructed to be a 45 to 52-ish win team, right? Somewhere in that range, maybe. And they didn't do it because Embiid missed a lot of time, because Maxey missed time, because Paul George missed time, because they didn't play well. All of those things combined is to the reason as to why they won 20-some-odd games this year. So I think with the Sixers, their thought process was, hey, next year, if Embiid's healthy, and when Maxey's healthy, and when George is healthy, Guerschon Yabusele is a really nice bench piece to have that we would like to retain and try to figure out a way to do so. He is an energy guy. He's a hustle guy. Yeah. He's a guy that brings a spark off the bench, good catch and shoot guy. Could play some small ball 5, probably better suited to be the 4, but could play some small ball 5 if you need him to. And I think the role that he was brought in to fill, he would be able to fill. And so they looked at it and went, if we're healthy, we can compete. And if we can compete, we want Guerschon Yabusele on this team.
Yeah. He's his versatility. He can do a little bit of everything, like you said. Got to have the high motor when you play in a city like Philadelphia. It's all else being equal. Sure, you'd like to have him back, but they could have played the game if they wanted to and said, okay, we're going to bet that Grimes doesn't get more than this money. Mm-hmm. But if he does get more than this money, then we're going to have to move on from players that we probably like. If it became a matter of Grimes or Oubre, they'd rather have Oubre, or not Grimes, Yabusele or Oubre. They'd probably rather have Oubre, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, the Sixers wanted to bring him back. They could have been more creative in trying to bring him back. Doesn't it seem like that maybe they didn't necessarily have urgency to bring him back?
Yeah, I think they wanted to, but I think the urgency was less than we expected. But I do think that Grimes kind of holds the cards right now. And if the Sixers and Grimes were able to say, hey, let's do a little handshake deal and we'll set a number and you can explore the market, but we've got a number for you. And this is what our offer is going to be. I think they would have loved to do it, but that's just not how the reality of this works. There's only a handful of teams that can offer Grimes more than what the Sixers are able to because of retention and things like that. Obviously, Brooklyn's the big one because they have actual, real, legitimate cap space. And then the other one that a lot of people have brought up is San Antonio, where they can offer a little bit more than most other teams. Obviously, the Sixers have right of first refusal and can match because he's a restricted free agent, but they can only match up to X amount of dollars. So I think with the $6 million that Yabusele is now getting in New York and not here, that's everything's going to Quentin Grimes. Like the expectation to me is that Quentin Grimes is going to be a Sixer next year.
Yeah.
Because if he's not, like that means somebody offered him $1 bazillion that we just didn't expect.
Which isn't going to happen. It's not. It's flat out going to. Yeah, he's going to be a 76er, which is that's great. Yeah, like losing Yabusele, it was more fun to do the yabba dabba do and stuff like that. But yeah,
he was a good role player who had to play more than was expected because of injuries.
Yeah, agreed. The other big story in the NBA, we said that there wasn't a lot of fireworks, Tyler, but so nobody saw this coming for sure. As the Bucks get rid of Damian Lillard, they waive him. They use this provision that honestly, I didn't even know that it was in existence. It's the stretch provision. This is the largest use of it, where they can spread it out and the cap number goes from where he was before to where it's $22.5 million. So he just tore his Achilles. He's likely to miss all of next season. So they cut him and they signed Miles Turner away from the Pacers, and they used that cap space that they got from releasing Damian Lillard to sign Miles Turner. Some would say this was a last-ditch effort to try to keep Giannis, but others are saying, no, Giannis is going to leave now because he's looking at him and saying, well, like, what are you doing? But like the Bucks may be saying, well, Lillard wasn't going to play next year anyway, and it's pretty clear Giannis has eyes. I think he's going to be a Laker with Luka after this season. But still, it was like, how many years did we salivate over this guy, Damian Lillard? And it's like, oh, gotta get him here, get him here. Aren't you kind of happy that he didn't get here? Because he even though he was putting up like numbers, I mean, how did the Bucks just get rid of him for more or less nothing? I don't know, man. It was weird. I was shocked when they did it.
Well, I mean, I think every fan base across the league would have wanted Damian Lillard if the option was presented to them, right? Like, this is a guy who I was talking with Andrew Frazier about his numbers yesterday. He's played 900 regular season games in his career and has averaged over 36 minutes per night for basically 13 years now. He's 25 point per night scorer. Like last year, he had 24.9 points per game in the 58 games that he played before the injury. Like, this dude still has it. Now, what's his explosiveness when he comes back from injury? That is obviously yet to be determined because it's a pretty significant injury for a guy who's going to be 35 by the time he's back.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard a lot of talk like the Achilles injuries and how they're happening with Halliburton, with Tatum. Yeah, like it's weird, but so then I heard up in Boston, they were being like, all right, well, what can you expect from Tatum coming back? From like, will he not be as explosive? He's young enough to where even if it affects him a little bit, right? Like Lillard's a totally different story. You're absolutely right.
And listen, if Damian Lillard never stepped foot on the floor again, he would walk into the Basketball Hall of Fame. Like, he's that good and has been that good throughout his career, both in the NBA and at the in the Olympic level and things like that. Sure. So he could theoretically just say, "No, I'm cool." He clearly still wants to play. I think that's a given. He's been that type of competitor forever. But I think that, it's a fair question to ask when you have a guy who's, going to be 35 by the time he steps back on the floor. What are the expectations? I would imagine it's a slow recovery. I would imagine it's a slow ramp up. Like, I don't think you see 36 minutes, 25 points a night, Damian Lillard right out the chute. It may take him some time to get back to that type of player.
Right. Yeah. So do you think Doc Rivers knows that they released him? Because you know what happens once the season's over with Doc? He's playing golf.
He's out on the golf course.
He may not even know. He might not have checked his phone last night and been like, all right, who's texting me? Who are these phone calls from? We got rid of that. Damian Lillard got released. Oh, okay. All right. Let me get back to the team.
He doesn't have the GM's number saved. It's just a scam likely came up.
No, if you may remember this, there was apparently a power struggle going on between the owner and Doc was trying to like get power and reportedly, and then like the GM, he was trying to take power from the GM or whatever. This is like when you hire Doc Rivers, this is inevitable. It's going to happen. Giannis is going to get traded. They cut Damian Lillard, even though they have to pay him $112 million to leave. How about that? Don't feel bad for Damian Lillard. He's going to be just fine.
It's funny too. I half jokingly said, you know what I would do if I were Damian Lillard? Nothing.
Yeah.
Just collect my paycheck.
Well, yes. But he can all like if he signs, because no one's going to sign him this year unless they want to. That's a way to bring him on and you give him a limited salary this year. But I mean, there's sucker teams out there that need him. When I say sucker teams, I'm talking about like the Heat, teams that are desperate, that just want the Cavs may be interested in him. There's a lot of teams out there that would want him. By the way, just Google Doc Rivers. And one of the first things that came up under top stories is, you're not going to disrespect me as a man, Matt Barnes recalls, almost fighting Doc Rivers on the Clippers. So I guess he was on a podcast or something. And he said he was fought Doc Rivers,
which is interesting because for all the flack that we give Doc Rivers and we joke about him a lot, all you ever hear about Doc Rivers is that he's an excellent human being and somebody who players respect as a person, right? Like, you may not like him as a coach, and that's totally fair because he's been very underwhelming with the exception of one championship. But all we've ever heard about, and from our experience here,
yeah, he
seems like a great dude.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. So that's an interesting story.
We had just lost to Golden State. They beat our ass, and Blake and DJ didn't have the best games. But for some reason, just that day, he wanted to go at me in the film room. And I'm someone, you can coach me, you can yell at me, you can do whatever you want. You're not going to disrespect me as a man. That's why I don't give a bleep who you are. That's where I draw the line. Well, Matt Barnes is also a lunatic. If you follow his, his podcast is called All the Smoke or something like that, or Up in Smoke. Yeah, he's like the modern day Cheech and Chong. Matt Barnes. Or whatever. All right. Well, that's our 76ers portion of the show. Oh, by the way, where were you when Eric Gordon re-signed with the 76ers? Where were you?
Hey, we said it yesterday. He was gonna come back for a cheaper deal, and it was gonna work for the Sixers. And
Yep.
It's like $1 million, but it works for the Sixers. So
yeah, it's 1.3 million. They were able to shave off the cap, and he gets a little bit of a raise for it. So, yep. Oh, yes, that's why we call you Tyler the Insider. He's the show's Shams. All right, coming up. Yes, we have the Phillies back in action today. Some Flyers find their goalie, and is trash starting to pile up in front of your home if you live in the city of Philadelphia? It probably is. Philly with John Marks. PHLY. Don't go anywhere. Don't go anywhere. All right, so listen, check it out. Empire today. New flooring. You need it. If you do need it, right now is a great time. Empire today, they bring the showroom to your room. And what does that mean? Well, it's a free in-home consultation estimate. So you want to see what they have. They come out to your home. So now you're seeing what your flooring is going to look like in your home, in your room, with your lighting, with your furniture. Go to a showroom? Okay, that's fine. But that's not your home. You don't know how that is going to look in your space. They take precise measurements. They answer every question. And you're not standing around, like you're actually comfortable in your home, and there's no surprises. You get all the answers you need. And then if you're ready to schedule something, installation can be scheduled as soon as the next day. That's right. How about a discount? Discount? Yes. $350 off. Just use the code PHLY. EmpireToday.com/PHLY. $350 discount. Use the code PHLY. Restrictions do apply, but get at them today. Flooring experts, that's all they do. From the first contact until your job's complete, they're with you the entire way. That's correct. EmpireToday.com/PHLY. All right, Rothman Orthopedics. Listen, if you're in pain, right, there's not a better place to go than Rothman. Right? You want to get back to doing what you love. It's the summertime, you're active, and you're hurting. Whether it's your shoulder, your elbow, your back, your knee, your ankle, Rothman Orthopedics, they have you covered. The experts, they proudly serve dozens of communities with 30-plus convenient offices in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Florida. Urgent cares, walk-in centers, physical therapy. I had a shoulder problem. I went to Rothman. I did my physical therapy right there connected to Rothman in Limerick. Amazing. So if you want to get back to what you love, because if you have nagging pain in your knee, not something where maybe it hurts you every day, but after you're active, the next 2 or 3 days, you can't really do much, and you decide the following weekend, you know what? Maybe I'm going to not go for that run, or I'm not going to play golf. I'm going to give it another week. You don't have to live like that. RothmanOrtho.com/PHLY. RothmanOrtho.com/PHLY. And right here in the Philadelphia area, Center City, Northeast Philly, the Navy Yard in South Philly. Full spectrum of orthopedic care, Rothman Orthopedics. Check them out, RothmanOrtho.com/PHLY. Hooah. All right, we're back. Philly with John Marks. On it's a little bit soggy out still. I think I'm off next week. I'm going down the shore. So I'm finally at the point, Tyler, I'm at the point where you don't want to look at the iPhone forecast because it's totally bogus as it is. Because if there's a chance of showers, it'll have if you look at next Wednesday, it'll be like, oh, well, it's supposed to rain next Wednesday. Because my kids are now looking at the forecast. I'm like,
sure,
we don't know what's going to happen next Wednesday. Stop.
I got duped by the automated forecast yesterday because I tweeted from the PHLY Phillies account and I was on weather.com, which, listen, if you're thinking about reliability, weather.com should probably be number one, should it not?
But it's not. You're so right.
But it's not. Right. So I screenshot it and I was like, hey, look, there might be a little bit of a window for the Phillies to play. And then like 15 minutes later, the Phillies were like, we've postponed tonight's game due to rain. And I'm
Yeah,
like, I look like a moron.
well, I was like, yo, I had no idea. I really didn't. I knew, like, that there's storms and things like that. I didn't realize that it was going to be like literally, it's like, wow, they're postponing the game. Oh, doubleheader tomorrow. So that sucked. But yeah, so you can't take the iPhone forecast too seriously. But I believe today it's going to be. Let's actually look on the iPhone forecast here. Yeah, today is going to be cloudy. Yeah, with a chance of snow. 3 to 6 inches if you're north and west of the city. The 95 corridor is where you have to look out for that. But it takes me back to when I first started working at WIP. I worked nights from February until like November. And this was 2017. So it was the Pete McCann Phillies. And it was a long season, man. Doing pre and post and sitting around the studio the entire it was bad. It was really tough. But there was one night where I would come in and I would do like the pre at 6:00, and then you would send it to the Phillies network at like 6:30. So I had a half hour. So like, what you're going to talk about for a half hour. You're going to talk about the pitching matchups. You have a couple of sponsored segments. It's very easy to do, right? So I get in, like 5:30, whatever time I get in. No idea that there were storms or something. It was in DC, and it's like, yeah, the game's postponed. So it's like, huh? Now I got to do a 4-hour show.
4-hour show
in 15 minutes from now. Now, like, that's kind of where I'm at my best, because I forget what I talked about that night. But like, I came out and I just started killing everybody, and it worked. But like, it's just, that's the thing. Like, I had no idea that there wasn't going to be a game last night. None. And there wasn't a game.
Anybody that's worked in radio for any like length of time has had that type of show where, so I had one where I was the like executive producer of Temple football for a while at the Fanatic. And it was plug and play when you did those games, right? Logs were loaded and you just hit buttons, right? So it was a pretty straightforward job. But the year right after everybody had, like, things had kind of come back from COVID a little bit, there was always the question mark of our teams passing weekly COVID tests and things like that. And I think it had come out that there were some question marks about the Temple's, I forget if it was Temple or the opponent, but the COVID tests were like questionable. And so they postponed the games where everybody had to go take another test. And so they were like, well, what do you want to do? Do you want to throw it to studio? Do you want to, I'm like, all right, you could throw it to studio, but like, I'm going to have to do a show on the fly. So it was like, and it wasn't 4 hours. It was like 45 minutes. But it was one of those things where I'm like, all right, well, I'm coming in. I'm going to talk Sixers. Like, I'm not going to talk about Temple football.
You would last about 3 minutes if you're going to talk about Temple football.
Right. So I pivoted, did a Sixers show, and then had to go back into running the Temple. It was a strange game.
They couldn't take like Harry Donahue, and it was a Paul Palmer. They
did it for a while.
Then they decided
and then they're like, yeah, all right, well, this is going for a while. Like, we're gonna throw it back to studio and just provide something.
Gotcha. All right. Well, that kind of makes sense. There's a trash strike, a city worker strike that's going on in Philadelphia. I don't know if people, like, for me, I don't live in the city, so it's not something that you worry about. But still, it's when your trash isn't being picked up and you're in July in a very hot and humid city, that's not good. It's more than just sanitation. It's a good portion of city workers, but still on strike. So it takes me back, Tyler, to 1986, almost 40 years ago. The one thing I remember from the trash strike, at the same time, it was NBA free agency. And Dr. J, Julius Erving, was close to signing with the Utah Jazz.
Oh, wow.
That's correct. I think Doc he signed a 1-year contract with the Sixers. Harold Katz didn't want to give him a raise, and the Jazz were offering him another year and like $500,000 more. But yeah, it was like, I remember watching Channel 6, and whether it was I think it was Don Tolson who was doing sports then, but it was like Dr. J could be leaving to go to Utah. As a kid that grew up, like Dr. J's leaving to go to the Utah Jazz. I was like, what? And I remember that was at the same time as it It was the same time as the trash strike, because at the time, city residents started bringing their trash down and throwing in front of Veterans Stadium. So there was this big, huge pile of trash. How ironic, in front of Veterans Stadium. In front of Veterans Stadium, because no one was picking up their trash.
In front of a big, huge pile of trash.
Correct. Now, 1986, it was a pile of trash. We just didn't realize how bad then.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that was that was a 20-day strike. So you're talking about 3 weeks of trash not being picked up.
It's funny when you bring up the Dr. J story, because there's a lot of stories like that with cheap ownership and not getting, the raises the players deserve. And now you think about the money and how it's inflated over the last 40 years, where it's like, hold up, you're going to grovel over $500,000 for Julius Erving, one of the greatest players in the history of the NBA. You're going to grovel over, like, think about that today. That would be like groveling over, I don't know, probably $4 or $5 million for LeBron James.
Yep. Yeah, it was like when they let Brian Dawkins leave.
Right.
Like, could you imagine? I mean, Norman Brayman said, we don't want Reggie White or Seth Joyner or Keith Jackson, all those great players that the Eagles had. They're like, they're not worth that money. Modern day NFL owners, like, you're so right, Tyler. When you look back at baseball back in the 50s and 60s and 70s, these owners are like, they would trade away these great players because they didn't want to pay them. And there was no free agency. So the player can't do anything other than be mad or maybe hold out. Yeah, but these owners that are like, hey, let me see here. Let me smoke on my cigar. I'm not paying these players that kind of money. Are you kidding me? That's what Harold Katz was doing with Doc. Royalty. He had just won a championship a couple years ago. Like, literally, especially at that point, one of the great players in the history of the NBA, a guy that changed the league, one of a kind, first of his kind. So it was nuts, but that's the way it worked back then. And Doc almost went to the Jazz, but he ended up coming back, took $400,000 less to come back to the Sixers for one more year.
I forget who it was. There was I think it was a Phillies player, but I don't want to be wrong on who it was. But they were arguing over a raise, and the ownership group was like, well, you don't hit the ball like far enough, or you don't hit the ball hard enough, or something like that. And the player basically retorted, if I hit the ball any farther, they'd be outs.
Right.
I want to say maybe it was Richie Ashburn, but I don't know if it was for certain or not. But it was like, it was a singles hitter. And the player was like, if I hit the ball any harder, I hit the ball any farther, they'd be outs. Do you want me to get on base or do you want me to not? And you're right. It was like the ownership groups that are, and that's why, that's why Curt Flood was so important to baseball, and really, quite honestly, just sports in general. Like, Curt Flood's free agency with the Cardinals was so important because it opened the door for this market that we have now for free agency.
Yeah, who was it recently that I saw? Oh, Dave Parker passed away, the Hall of Famer for the Pirates, and I saw at one point him and Pete Rose were the only, I think it was Pete Rose, were the only players that were making $1 million a year. Sure. Now, granted, that was 45 years ago, but still, when you look at especially you mentioned the NBA. I mean, Jesus, man, they give max contracts just to guys because of who they are.
Well, what did we say the other day? Kelly Oubre is like the 130-something highest paid player in the NBA,
making $8 million,
$8 million in a league that rosters 15 guys a team.
It's crazy. Yeah, the money's become unbelievable, but it just shows you how much money the owners are making off of it too. But sure. I mean, look, the NFL didn't have free agency until the early 90s. It was the same thing. These guys didn't. Emmitt Smith held out from the Cowboys because there wasn't free agency. He couldn't leave, and he was unhappy with the money that he was making. They had this thing called Plan B free agency. It was almost like the Rule 5 draft. They could only protect a certain number of players, but the number of players was a lot.
Sure.
So there weren't a lot of players that you cared if you lost. Now, there've been a couple of good it was called Plan B free agency. And I remember the one Eagles player that I loved, William Frizzell, they had signed through Plan B free agency, but it was Fugazi free agency. They just protected all their good players. I mean, that's not that long ago to think that NFL, when you look at what it is today, that they didn't have free agency in the sport. That's absolutely nuts. Tyler, I need your help on what the Flyers did yesterday. We know that they needed a second goalie. They needed an upgrade, and they got one, I guess, or at least they signed a free agent goalie. So I've been paying attention a lot to the PHLY Flyers guys, and man, they do such a great job. I'm telling you, the best coverage of anything that I've seen. But so you get a goalie and you get a center. So you're signing some players. They have some money in free agency. It looks like they're doing what Rick Tocchet wants, because I guess the center that they signed played for Tocchet, the Vorak. And then they signed a goalie that I've never heard of before, but it seems like he's going to be the
Darth Vader.
2. Is that his nickname, Darth Vader?
Yeah, his last name's
Vladar.
Yeah, and I think they call him Darth Vader. But anyway, so they signed a 3 or 4C. They signed a 7th defenseman, and they signed a tandem goalie. Like, they did probably the bare minimum of what they were supposed to do this free agency. Now, I will say this, and I'm going to apologize. Maybe my hockey friends in the chat can correct me. There is a guy in the KHL that they're waiting on, and I don't know if it's Shabanov or Shabanov, and I apologize for that. That is the guy that they are waiting on to see if he is good, because they have been linked to him for quite some time now. And point per game type of player in the KHL. Numbers look really, really good.
Igor Zavagin.
Oh no, that's a different player. It's Maxim. And again, I don't know if it's Shabanov or Shabanov. I apologize.
Maxime Ouellet.
Yeah, Maxime Ouellet. 67 points in 65 games last year in the KHL. Like, that's the dude who, like, I think they're kind of waiting on with bated breath. Who could be a pretty sizable free agent move for a fairly easy, fairly good price tag for them. I think so. They went small. Like, the $5 million for the year is a substantial overpay, but if they can flip them at the deadline for a mid-round pick, that's probably what they'll end up doing. I don't think that this goalie tandem is going to be particularly great this year, but I assume that they'll probably wait this thing out one more year.
So this is another rebuild year, because I read Rich Hoffman's allphly.com. Get the PHLY daily. Rich Hoffman Jr. essentially gives you the sports page in a newsletter, and it's emailed to you every morning, and I read it every morning. He said the same thing you did, which is like, well, at the trade deadline they could trade him for a 2nd or 3rd round draft pick. Right. So I see, like, I'm very much a Zamboner. I guess this team, we're not a playoff team next year.
Okay, Red uses a good word there. It's a good transitional year. Like, they're going to be better than they were last year. I think just by default, you add Zegras. I think does Luchenko play? For a bulk of this year, still remains to be seen. I would be interested to see how that turns out. I think these guys are going to be stopgaps. They're going to be better. They'll probably be I would say they're going to be on the outside looking in, but I think it'll be a more competitive full season from this team. But if you ask me right now, do I think the Flyers are a playoff team? I would say no.
Wow, man. All right. Well, so what year would that be then? 2027 that you're looking for the playoffs? God, man. Yeah. I'm getting too old for this.
Yeah, 26, 27. Because here's the thing. Not only do I think it'll be that next step, if Zegras is the guy you expect him to be, you'll lock him up long-term. You have a ton of money coming off of the books. You have a couple of contract retentions that come off the books. I believe Lawton, not that they're paying a bazillion dollars for these guys, but the contract retention that you took on when you traded Lawton comes off the books. The contract retention when you traded Kevin Hayes comes off the books. So, like, they're going to have some serious money to spend in the 26-27 offseason. And then the hope is that some of these guys are ready to compete. Like, Luchenko should be here on an everyday basis. You're hoping that, like, a Barkey and a Bonk are ready to compete. How close is Zavragin to being an NHL goalie? Like, I think that the tree opens itself up next season.
All right. Well, let me know how it goes when they're ready to. I'm ready to watch. I'm ready to watch good hockey.
Oh God, I miss good. Like, even as, like, and you and I are casual hockey fans. Like, we know enough to talk about it, and we do it. But we're not Bill and Charlie, right? Like, those guys are in the weeds with it. But there is something missing from Philly sports, and it's good hockey. Yeah. Like, this team rallies around good hockey. This city rallies around good hockey. It's kind of the same with baseball, where the casual fan checks out when the team is not good. And the casual Phillies fan checked out for quite some time in the 2010s when they weren't good. But there is something special about a good hockey team in this city. And you saw it in 2010 when they made the cup run. They were a 7 seed who got in on the last day and ended up making a cup run, and it was magical. And I think that it's missing in Philly. And I think a lot of fans, even the casual hockey fan, wants good hockey back in this city.
Hey man, I was a big Flyers fan with the Legion of Doom during that run right there. I mean, really, the Flyers were good in the 80s too. They didn't win a cup, but they were good in the 80s. And then in the 90s, they'd fallen off. Bobby Clark left. Jay Snyder, Ed Snyder's son, he ended up being like the GM and president, and that didn't work out well. Bobby Clark came back right after they got Eric Lindros, and they kind of rebuilt the team, and
Sure.
and they were good. And then I really enjoyed those Keith Primo teams, early Giroux, Keith Primo teams. They were fun teams. Man, it's like a decade ago, isn't it? Over a decade ago. I mean, Jesus.
I will say there is a portion of the fan base about my age, late 20s to mid 30s, who really their first true introduction to hockey was a team that was kind of the end of the 90s run into the 2000s run, where they went to the Game 7 of the Eastern Conference Finals against the Lightning, and they were a consistent playoff team for a while, and then they really faltered, right? And then they had the strike, and then they come back with the Giroux teams, the Richards teams, the Carter teams. That was, to me, that was my Flyers team. Every fan generation of the fan base has their Flyers team. The Carter Richards led teams with Pronger, that was my Flyers team. And I think for a lot of people about my age, that was their Flyers team. And we're desperately waiting for a good Flyers team again.
Last 12 seasons, how many times did they made the playoffs?
5.
4.
It's because it was every other year for a decade, right? And then they've missed the last 3.
Lost first round, missed, lost first round, missed, lost first round, missed, lost second round.
Yeah,
that was Alain Vigneault's first season. And then 1, 2, 3, they've missed 5 seasons in a row. So that's what I'm saying. Believe me, Jonesy and Danny Briere, it's important to build it the right way. And obviously that's what they should do. Also keep in mind, it's been 5 years since this team's made the playoffs. So you don't want to make moves to where it's going to hurt you if the goal's winning the cup, which it obviously is. But
hey, if it makes you feel any better, the Sabres haven't been to the playoffs in over a decade, and they weren't trying to tank for a while.
Yeah, that's. And what else? Well, I guess you have the Bills are actually good now, but still, I think Buffalo, that's got to be a crazy hockey market. I mean, some of the great Legion of Doom rivalries was against the Sabre teams, where they just had a whole line full of goons, and there would be fights all the time. Dominic Hasek, there'd be goalie fights, Gar Snow's fighting everybody. They were fun. Those teams were fun. All right, well, listen, like I said, let me know when the Flyers are good again, because
I'll give you a call this time next year.
Every year I go into the season, I'm like, ready to watch the Flyers, and I'm like, oh, they suck again. No, but you watch Mitchkov, and it's like, yeah, I like watching Mitchkov, but it can't just be Mitchkov alone. I'm not. You had said with the Phillies, and it's true. I watch the Phillies regardless. Even when they suck, I like watching them. I'm not like that with the Flyers. And
but
Bill and Charlie and a lot of Flyers fans are like that.
Yeah, they're inverse, where they're Flyers fans die hard and they'll watch the Phillies when they're good. Just depends on what sport that really kind of catches your fancy.
Yeah. All right. Parlay of the day coming up here right after this. Maybe I'm going to look at both Phillies games today and see maybe I can do something with that. Parlay of the day coming up. And what's going on with Malik Beasley up in Detroit, where he's now involved in a gambling investigation? That's crazy. And I do have one word on Saquon Barkley. One thing on Saquon Barkley as well. That's all coming up. Philly with John Marks, PHLY. Why? All right, let's talk about BetParx. So you got 2 opportunities today to get on the BetParx app with our baseball team and check it out. All right. If you can't succeed, try again. That's what we're going to try with the BetParx Parlay of the day. But listen, let's see what happens today. You got 2 games to deal with. And then also what's going on right now at the Excite Center. All right. So they're rocking at the Excite Center at Parx Casino. So check it out. This is coming up actually tomorrow. Gary Clark Jr. I don't know who he is, but I'm sure people like him. UB40 in September. The Australian Pink Floyd show. Wish You Were Here 50th anniversary. That's in September. The Revivalists. Kansas. Very popular classic rockers. Kansas. That's in October. And look at Everclear. A tribute to Queen coming up. Bill Murray and his Blood Brothers. Tickets are at parxcasino.com. Tickets are on sale right now. If you haven't seen something at the Excite Center, state-of-the-art, great venue to see really anything that they do there. Tickets again at parxcasino.com. You must be 21. Gambling problem. Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Hoo-ah. All right, so about GLAT hair restoration for a second. You know GLAT hair. You know what I'm going to say here. If you're balding, if you're shedding, if you're thinning, well, listen, you can get your hair back as I got my hair back. I had restoration, but now I'm doing the innovation portion of it, right? So I don't want to lose any of the existing hair that I have because the hair looks great, right? So what do? Well, that's the innovation part of GLAT hair restoration. Vitamin supplementation. There's a yearly maintenance called Alma-TED, which kind of slows down the hair loss process. It stops with thinning and shedding. You'll see a real difference. You will. You'll see and feel a real difference. All the things that they offer right now, if you see, you go on social media and you're like, oh, well, like, look at this guy. He sprays this on his hair. Look how great his hair is. Like, we're talking about this. This is real. GLAT hair restoration, glathairmm.com. Text or call them at 610-980-4000. 610-980-4000. You can text your picture to them. Say, hey, heard Johnny Marks talking about you. And that's a great way to kind of get in. And if you want to set up a consultation and get into the office, they're there for you from your first phone call until you decide what you're going to do, until your aftercare, your follow-up visits. If you want to stop losing your hair, you want to get your hair back, the experts in the industry, over 30 years of experience in hair. I've known the hair team for going on 15 years now. Talk to them on a regular basis. Text or call 610-980-4000, glathairmm.com. We are back. Philly with John Marks, PHLY. All right, before the BetParx Parlay of the day, I have a very important question to ask our viewers and listeners today. Tyler Zuley, you grew up in Bucks County. I grew up in Montgomery County. Some of this is regional, but then I've also seen that people in different states also are involved in this conversation. So we had ice cream last night. I was over my happy 40th birthday to my sister-in-law. But so we had dinner and we had ice cream last night. And ice cream, is it sprinkles or is it Jimmy's? The ultimate Philadelphia conversation.
That is a conversation that will start fights in some areas.
It did last night.
I believe they're sprinkles.
All right. So across the board sprinkles.
No. Rainbow sprinkles, chocolate Jimmy's.
Okay. That I think is the ultimate compromise. Because that is like, and believe it or not, like the website Billy Penn, the blog Billy Penn, they did a deep dive on this topic in, I think, 2017. Because I actually went to it last night because I remember reading it. So there's a lot of different theories on how the name Jimmy got started, including the company that makes the, Peeps that nobody eats, sure, but they show up every year at Easter. Yeah, I've never eaten them. So they also made the sprinkles, and the guy that worked on making the sprinkles, his name was Jimmy. So that's why they come. But that's been debunked too, because anyway, like before that. And so long story short, here's how I look at it. I think the best way to do it is what you said. I would never say chocolate sprinkles. I would always say chocolate Jimmy's. And rainbow sprinkles definitely is something that is said a lot.
Yeah.
If it's on a donut, it's a sprinkle. It's not a Jimmy, because it's the same thing, right? So I go to Dunkin' Donuts. My kids always want the sprinkles. I don't ask for Jimmy's on a donut, but chocolate Jimmy's, rainbow sprinkles. Boom. I think you hit the nail on the head for sure.
Yeah, I do think it's area by area. Like if you go down the shore, it's different. If you go, like you said, if you go to Monco, it's different than going to Bucks County. It's an interesting conversation for sure.
Yeah, and it's also like parental. You will use like my but my wife uses the word crown for crayons, which is such like a Philadelphia area type term. And she won't stop. And my nanny, we had a nanny, once upon a time had a nanny, and she was a college educated. She was going into teaching, she was awesome. She was the best. She called them crowns. And I said to my wife, I'm like, we have to stop the madness right now. We have to stop the madness. We were at a restaurant once, waiting for to be seated, and the hostess, it was at a PF Chang's, and the hostess is asking this couple with 2 young children, do you want crowns? And I see the wheels in motion for the parents. They're like, crowns? Why would we
put on my head?
Crowns for the kids? And they're like, and I'm watching and I go, you're saying crayons? And she goes, oh yes, would you like some crayons? And the customers are like, yeah, sure, we'll take some crayons for the kids.
Right.
Because a crown goes on your head. So unless you have this disgusting regional word that from being in the Philadelphia, a crown, it's not a crown, it's a freaking crayon. Stop the madness, please.
Well, I think the big one, so when I went away to college, and maybe it was me trying to work on my vocabulary a little bit because I knew I was getting into this industry.
Spell out the word.
I dropped WOODER for WATER. And I started saying water at about 19 or 20 years old. And I say water now. And my dad still to this day, nah, it's water. And I'm like, there is no O in that word. It is water. And he goes, no, it's water. And I'm like, so you're telling me the rest of the world is wrong and our little sect of the world is the right way to pronounce it. So that was the big one for me was I dropped WOODER in college and have not done water since.
Yeah, no, my mom does the water. We were my buddies from San Diego, whenever they bring me on the radio show, they'll always on purpose say water ice because they love the regionalism. And then we're at the game and my one buddy Woods is just, you could just tell he's eating up the regionalism as people talk to him. It's great. But I'm the same way with you. I think when I moved away to Hawaii was when I realized how people didn't know what I was talking about. I'll give you a word. I want you to pronounce it. And this is very regional in the area. CREEK.
See, I have always, when I read that word, it is creek. However, when you talk about going to the creek, it's a real thing, right? We used to play down by the creek and there would be frogs and there would be snakes. And it was something that there was one that ran through the middle of our baseball complex, and that's what it was. Creek is the word, but it would be, a lot of people would pronounce it CRICK.
I went down to the creek too, because it's my dad still says crick to this day. I don't know if my mom says it, but yeah, I'm not. So my kids don't even know what they know crowns, which I correct them on them all the time, but. Yeah, it would be the crick. You're right. You would go. What were the little crabs? What were they called? Not crabs. They were I don't know. But you pick up rocks and you're looking underneath the rocks for it. Not that you ever do anything with them other than take them and then they die because they can't live outside of the
right.
Crick. But yeah, I stopped the. So yeah. So okay. So we're very much the same person.
Oh yeah. I also think too. It's regional to a point, but I also think when you think about what you and Pat were talking about the Catholic school thing before, there are certain things even within that smaller group that you would say maybe in a Catholic school setting that didn't apply to everyday life. It's just it's funny when you shrink and shrink and shrink, and it's so there was a game we used to play. I'll ask you this. That was big for us because we were one of the few things we were allowed to play at recess in school. So the game where you have the bouncy ball, you throw it off the wall, and if you catch it in the air, you throw it at people.
We called it suicide or suey for short.
It's suey, right? I had never heard anybody call it suey outside of that small little group.
Is that
everybody
right?
else played wall ball?
So that's a Catholic thing because you're mostly at recess playing on a small blacktop and you're throwing balls against the wall. No, it was suey. I grew up that's what we did. We go suey. I got pegged in the back of the head so many freaking times.
Oh my gosh.
And now it wouldn't be called suicide for obvious reasons.
Correct.
We evolve and you don't do suicide pools anymore in football. It's called a knockout pool or whatever. But yeah, no, that was the we would always play Year round, you'd play
Yeah.
suicide or suey or whatever. Oh, so that's a Catholic thing. That actually
No,
makes
so
sense.
I'm not going to put that 1-to-1, but it did seem at least in my friend groups growing up, if like my friends that were Catholic school friends called it suey, my friends that were not called it wall ball. I don't know. It was just, maybe it was us, but that, like, it's funny when, like, you shrink it down to such a small sample size of, like, what school did you go to, or
Right.
how
What
did you,
parish?
right, what parish were you from? It's
Yeah.
crazy how much you can shrink it and have those types of conversations.
All right, well, let's do this, and then we'll do the BetParx parlay of the day. So I picked up takeout last night from a steakhouse, a high-end steakhouse, for her birthday. I didn't pay for it. My father-in-law did. But my wife did the online order, and she didn't see that it defaulted to like an 18% tip. And she hit it and then looked at the receipt. It was like, hold on a second. There's a $50 tip for takeout. It's like, all right, listen, I $5 or $10. First of all, where's the money going to? If it's just going to the hostess, handing me 2 bags for $50, no. If that's being pooled with the cooks in the back, you still ain't getting $50. But all right, 10 or $20 makes a little bit more sense.
Yeah,
$50 default on the website. Like, come on, man.
yeah. I believe in generous tipping because A, it's how most people in the food industry make their money, and B, like, I am even somebody who, if you're not getting at least 20% from me, you were disastrous at your job. Like, you have to be so bad at your job for me to not give you at least 20%. But so that's in dining in. If I dine in, it's baseline 20%, and you have to be like, you have to have had spit in my food or called me a name to not get 20%. But like, when it comes to takeout specifically, delivery, I'm still cool with like the 20% ish. But like, when it comes to takeout specifically, if I walk in and I pick my food up, the only transaction that's being made is the people that are making my food. I want them to get the money.
Right.
I want the cook to get the money, the line cook, the sous chef, those guys, those people to get the money. If I'm doing delivery driver gets it. If I'm doing eat in, I want the waiter. And I'm a big proponent of, I will hand the waiter or waitress cash. I always try to tip in cash if I can, because at that point, I know I handed it to them. If I write it on my credit card statement, I don't know if the owner's taking it. I don't know if they're pulling off the top. So if I hand them a $20 bill on a $100 check, if they do it, they can do whatever they want with it after that. It's on them. If they pull it, if they whatever. But if I can hand you the cash, I would much rather hand you the cash.
If you're watching on TV, slide on over to allphly.com. We're in overtime. Ooh-ah. There we go. Yeah, I couldn't believe, because here's why it doesn't make sense to me. If it's going to the employee, which, believe me, I'm all for employees getting as much money as they possibly can, right? But what the company, you're just going to end up pissing off the person that's ordering food if you're defaulting to 18% of a takeout order. You know what I mean? Like, sure. Leave it blank, leave a suggested thing. I don't know how many people don't tip on takeout. I'm assuming it's a good amount. $5 or $10 for me, like when we go to the Outback or whatever, they bring it out to your car or whatever, depending on how much. $10 is usually something good for that. $5-10 is usually something good for that. But $50, you're already spending $300 and some odd dollars. $50, no, man, way too much. All right, let's get to our BetParx parlay of the day. Tyler, because we bet the Phillies last night, so we obviously didn't get an opportunity to do our parlay.
I think that means we win, right? Because if a game gets voided, it only goes to the other play, right?
And yours won again?
It did. Joe Ryan went 7 innings last night. They 17.5 was the line. He ended up getting 21 outs. So yeah, I think that means we win, right?
It does, and you should be offering these picks via service.
Nope. The minute I start charging for them or trying to do it myself, we're gonna go 1-9.
Yep,
not happening.
The minute you start betting it, you will overthink it 100%. And you will lose. I've done the same thing. All right, what do you got tonight?
All right, I'm gonna go with it's a pretty particular one, and it's why it's plus money at plus 132. I'm gonna go with Yandy Diaz to record an RBI tonight in the Rays-A's game. Diaz had one of the best months of the year as a hitter. He hit 400 in June. He was 40 for 100 with 10 extra base hits and 13 RBIs. And he actually has reverse splits against righties this year. He's hitting 309 against righties, and 38 of his 47 RBIs have come against righties this season. I think it's going to be a tougher matchup with Mitch Spence on the mound, who was really good in June. But I like Diaz over the course of a couple of at-bats tonight. I'm going to take Yandy Diaz. So it's over a half an RBI, basically saying I think he's going to pick up an RBI tonight at plus 132.
All right. Well, there you go. I am actually going to take the Phillies in the second game.
Okay.
Chris Sanchez, because it's Dylan Cease against Chris Sanchez, Mick Abel against Pivetta in the first game. So I'm going to take the Phillies to win on the money line in the second game, minus 157. How often do you see splits and doubleheaders? A lot. So if I'm looking at the matchups, you feel much better with Chris Sanchez going in the night game. So I'll take the Phillies.
And Cease has been so weird this year. Like Cease's stuff is legit.
He's
like
bad. Yeah.
8-10 strikeout, easy type of night for him. But he's walking way too many hits. And that's been his problem for most of his career. But he's walking way too many guys. 3 walks in each of his last 2 starts, 5 in his start a couple of weeks ago. Like, he's just not been consistent. So one of 2 things happen. He either strikes out 10 Phillies or they jump on him early and Sanchez locks it down and they win this game going away.
Right. Yeah, I think I look for a split. Looking forward to both games. The other stuff that's our BetParx Parlay of the day. The other stuff I teased we'll get to tomorrow as we appreciate everybody watching, listening, and everything else. The Anthony Gargano Show is live right now if you want to slide on over to there. But we appreciate you. We're back tomorrow live at 8 a.m. and we'll talk to you then. See you.
We all silly like the mayor.